Hey guys, boys and ghouls. It's Halloween weekend when I'm recording this, about to be Halloween weekend, and I'm so excited for that. I might even get around to drinking a couple of my bookends throughout the weekend. I don't drink often, so it doesn't take much to let my inner rock star just go nuts. So not only am I excited about Halloween, I even dressed up my chihuahua. She's sleeping in my lap right now. And she has a little witch costume on without a hat because she just kicks the hat off. Hold on. Whoop. Yep, I'll let you go back to sleep. I am sorry. Anyways, so not only am I excited about Halloween weekend and all the alter egos just floating around out there, but I'm also really excited to be finally doing this video on Bitcoin's niche and really diving in to examining whether we should be considering it a currency. It describes itself on the Bitcoin organization page in that video as a currency. That's what its goal and design is to be. That's what its niche is to be, is the first digital currency. So I'm over here like, okay, you really want to call yourself money. You really want to call yourself a currency. Let's compare you to what the traditional definitions of money and a currency are. And in economics, in all my classes, it was very clear when we were going through money and banking and what the functions and definition of money currency is supposed to be, is to be a good medium of exchange, store of value, and unit of account. Okay, so now let's go from the perspective of a medium of exchange first, because that's the first definition. And I will admit, I think Bitcoin does an absolutely fantastic job of being a new and progressive and exciting medium of exchange. So the reason a medium of exchange is important is it allows you to transact very different natured goods. A good example of this is, let's say I am someone who produces Rubik's Cubes for a living. I'm a Rubik's Cube person and producer and seller, retailer, and I want to buy a llama, right? I'm just, you know what? I've always wanted a pet llama. Gonna keep him in the backyard, name him Como Se Llama. He's gonna be my buddy, right? So traditionally, in a barter system, I would have to figure out how many Rubik's Cubes is equal to the value of one llama that I want, right? But that's not really a nice way to do it because you're not going to get as much value out of your Rubik's Cubes that way, because chances are the llama farmer that I go and order my llama through out in South America probably doesn't value Rubik's Cubes. So he's going to be like, you know what? You're going to have to give me a lot of Rubik's Cubes. Now I'm going to have to figure out how to sell Rubik's Cubes to get something else I want in exchange for it. Like, it just makes for a much messier transaction if people aren't getting what they actually demand from the exchange. So Mr. South American llama farmer is like, well, let's use a medium of exchange that we can both agree on, that we can then readily exchange for goods and services that we actually want. So that way I can get my llama without having to pay excessive amounts for it to be worthwhile for him. And he doesn't have to end up with a giant inventory of Rubik's Cubes to have to figure out how to barter for something else to get what he wants, right? By the way, I'm actually noticing right now, as I'm holding this Rubik's Cube, that like the painting behind me, or the like piece of art I did behind me, these are all like pieces of Rubik's Cubes right here. The first cube I ever bought was from the dollar store, and I was fidgeting with it like you're supposed to do with Rubik's Cubes to solve them, right? And it busted because I got frustrated, go figure. And then I saved all the pieces and like glued them onto this, which is kind of funny. Anyways, side note. Okay, so what we do is come up with a medium of exchange that both of us can trade. And again, traditionally you had big coins of precious metals like gold and silver and all that kind of stuff, but that got really heavy. So eventually you get money that's backed by gold and silver, but eventually from there you get money that's not backed by gold and silver, it's backed by the faith of the US government or whatever government is backing and supporting and producing and controlling that currency, right? So now I can just say, hey, I'll keep all my Rubik's Cubes, sell them to people who want them, and I will pay X amount of dollars for Como Se Llama to come and live here in the United States. So now where Bitcoin and digital currency do an even better job at being a medium of exchange is the fact that you don't have to worry about transactions fees when it comes to exchange rates, I should say. Like you don't have to worry about exchange rates. So I don't have to exchange whatever my US dollars are for whatever currency the South American llama farmer is using in order to make the trade, because there's usually fees associated with that. And there's usually a lag time associated with it too, not only in order to exchange your currency, in order to buy and sell between different countries and different currencies, but there's a lag time in the way the network works in terms of like I would have to send it from my bank account that holds my fiat currency to his, and it's going to take time to clear that transaction. Where with Bitcoin and the digital currencies, it happens relatively instantaneously. So yay, 2 thumbs up for digital currency being a good medium of exchange. And I like the fact that too, personally, like outside of the fact that you don't have to worry about exchange rates, it unites us more on a global level because we're using the same currency. Because one of the forms of kind of implicit and to some degree subconscious patriotism that's happened for years and years and years and years is tied to the fact that most of us use different currencies based on what our country borders are. And so I like the fact, like, my political side really likes the fact that that's getting done away with and we can feel more united. Just like the internet helped unite us worldwide when it came to information and communication, I feel like currency and cryptocurrency is going to help unite us more when it comes to global commerce. So now it's time to talk about Bitcoin as a store of value. And that's where I'm a lot more skeptical in terms of giving it as much credibility as a currency. And the reason for this, the main reason, there's a few reasons, but the main reason for this is it hasn't had a good enough amount of time to establish itself as a reliable form of value to where I don't think the average user, average consumer would trust its volatility in price, its volatility in value enough to actually use it to make their day in and day out purchases. For example, traditional stores of value are things like money, currency, fiat money. You also have things like real estate and like gold and precious metals. And the thing with real estate and with gold and precious metals is those things, although they're illiquid, they are good, relatively illiquid, they're good stores of value because over time, over hundreds and hundreds of years, they've managed to prove themselves as a good store of value. Like granted, over time, like yes, their store of value, if you look at it in the long run, goes up and up and up with some, bubbles that happen here and there with some extra volatility, like the real estate bubble that happened in 2008. But overall, if you look at real estate from the beginning of when its value was tracked in the United States all the way until now, it still has an upward trend because it has a lot of intrinsic value to it. People need a place to live. Look at Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. What's at the base? Food, water, and shelter. So real estate is always going to have value so long as our vessels need shelter. And with gold, gold is intrinsically valuable because it's a physical asset. It has a lot of elemental properties that make it valuable, and it has a limited supply to it. I mean, the thing with digital currency is, yeah, it says Bitcoin supply is going to be capped at 21 million, but look at all the network forks. You can't take gold and then fork it into another form of gold that you're going to assume is going to be equally valuable. No, and alchemists have tried for generations upon generations to recreate gold, to remake gold, to increase the supply of gold, therefore change its value, but they haven't been able to succeed because gold inherently cannot be changed. It is what it is. Obviously, with cryptocurrency though, and with Bitcoin specifically, with any of them, you can change them. You can have a consensus that updates the network to where all of a sudden the supply cap is increased or potentially decreased. Therefore, its value is going to change. So I question Bitcoin and cryptocurrency's ability to be a good store of value for those reasons. And I also question it to be a good store of value because, again, it hasn't had nearly as long of a track record to prove itself relative to things like gold, real estate, even certain types of stocks in the stock market, or bonds in the bond market for that matter. Like, it hasn't had its chance to prove itself as a reliable long-term store of value, especially compared to the US dollar. And if you want more details and explanation on this, I suggest you go to my website. What's up, Krieger? He's like my little mascot over here. I like seeing him whenever I hit the landing page. And then scroll down to my further explanation on the Bitcoin niche. There it is. Read over the store of value part and you're going to get more detail as to why it's a little bit questionable. I also talk about liquidity in terms of why it's more questionable as being considered an official currency and form of money based on what we're used to. So finally, let's review Bitcoin's ability and digital currency's ability to be considered a good unit of account, which is the third and final definition of money. So when it comes to being a good unit of account, where Bitcoin is already starting to fall short is a psychological issue that happens. And there's even been articles that have been published about how one of the big hurdles Bitcoin and Bitcoin specifically is going to have to jump in order to gain more relevancy across our entire economy is the fact that it's listed as very small fractions of a whole number. We're not used to thinking of our hard-earned money in terms of like if I want to go buy a Frappuccino or something is going to be worth 0.0000 something of a whole unit. And I also believe in terms of day in and day out transactions, Bitcoin isn't going to be a good unit of account for a while because its price is always fluctuating. Its volatility makes it difficult, for example, a restaurant owner to want to use Bitcoin as its primary form of exchange currency when they would have to constantly be updating their menus to express what the price of their Caesar salad is going to be. And then the same goes for people in terms of like a personal balance sheet. Like there's a lot, your average person out there, the largest demographic of people that would have to adopt this are people that work really hard for their money every day. And if you're out there working hard for your money, maybe working at that restaurant, and you get paid in Bitcoin or you get paid in any currency, digital or not, that's extremely volatile, it's going to be difficult for you to want to use that, because if you have all of these fixed costs, like your rent and your car and your insurances and all that kind of stuff, they're relatively fixed costs, but you're getting paid in a currency that's fluctuating rapidly, that's really unnerving. And so a lot of people, like I'll think of like some of my friends that are my age that aren't really finance people. I can almost promise you if their employer said, hey, I'm going to start paying you in this really volatile, highly fluctuating currency, and they weren't able to budget for how much value they were actually going to have every 2 weeks when their paycheck hit, they'd be pretty pissed off and not want to use it. Okay, guys, so to be fair, I didn't want to only represent the traditional definitions of money as our litmus test for whether or not we should consider Bitcoin and digital currencies to be official currency and official money. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to call the IRS and I'm going to ask them how they classify and define and tax cryptocurrency, and in their terms, digital currency, right? So I looked some stuff up online, but I was not satisfied with that. I wanted a further definition, especially when it did cite on the IRS website that cryptocurrency is considered property. And I'm like, okay, but there's nowhere where it defines property. I want to know what property is and if that's any different from how they treat the US dollar. So I decided to give them a call, and I just have to point out the fact that it's really funny. Here's, I'm going to scroll to my notes really quick. So here's some of my notes for this video that you also might want to check out if you see them here. But anyways, here's the phone number for IRS, and I have to point out how funny it is because it's 1-800-829-1040. So I thought it was funny that they have 1040, like the form, as part of their phone number. So anyways, I call that number. long story short, I don't get through to anybody, which isn't surprised. They just keep referring you to their website. So I was like, okay, fine. I've been an H&R Block customer doing my own taxes with their software, like business taxes, personal taxes, my grandma's taxes. Like I've been my family's little tax accountant for the past few years, and I always use H&R Block software, and I like them. And they always say like, oh, if you order the premium and business one, then you get access to our hotline, like our phone and our chat with actual tax accountant representatives. So I went that route. And I also posted that. Let's go into the screen share. I posted my conversation. I saved it and posted it on, oh, here it is, on the website. So it says, my convo with an H&R Block rep on how Bitcoin is classified and taxed by the US government. And so here are some of the different questions that throughout this conversation I was able to get answered. And they're questions like, how is crypto taxed for retailers that accept it as a payment? How is it used as a medium of exchange to make purchases? How is crypto taxed and used as an investment? So maybe it's being used as a medium of exchange, but maybe it's being used as an investment, like you would invest in stocks and bonds. Like, how is it treated? And throughout this conversation, all of these questions get answered. And I finally just kept asking her about, because she wasn't giving me a straight answer at first, and I kept asking her about the definitions of property and like, what does property mean? And then here, let me see if I can find the line that actually says it. In the tax code, property is defined as any matter or thing capable of private ownership. And I put wow down here. I was like, wow, that gives a lot of wiggle room for Uncle Sam, which is so true, because basically anything in the US tax code is defined as property, and now digital currency applies to that. And when I say anything is considered property, that also means the US dollar is considered property. In this conversation, this official conversation, if you scroll down to the bottom, she even acknowledges the fact that both are classified as property because they're anything that could be owned technically, and both are treated like digital currency is treated the same as the US dollar when it comes to defining and taxing. That's kind of a good nod for those of us who are trying to get it to become like the currency that potentially changes the world. So on that note, I'm going to wrap this video up a bit. I hope you had a safe and happy Halloween by the time you're watching this. I'm sure if you're anything like me, you got a little tipsy at a party and started pouring your heart and soul out about cryptocurrency. And if you want to follow me on social media, I have an Instagram and a Facebook where the pictures about life and everything go up. I also post some fun TED Talks on there. I also have a Twitter account at Kendynomics is the handle, and that's where I post up different things about not just cryptocurrency news, but interesting news in finance in general. And I'm also going to try and get better about posting updates about when the website's been updated, when videos get updated. So check that out. And on a little side note at the very end, it's October, when this video recorded, it's still October, which is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. If you are an investor in cryptocurrency and you want to do good above and beyond what your plans for your investments are, then consider donating it. And I'm going to do a little screen share right now about I Googled like different charities that accept Bitcoin, and the most credible site I was brought to was this one through Fidelity. And Fidelity has a long-standing reputation, so go ahead and check this out. I'll post the link in the description box below, and it talks about if you want to donate your Bitcoin to charity, and just like with other charitable donations that you would make in the form of stocks, if you donate that directly to whatever the qualifying charity is, whatever your choice of charity is, then the charity itself, if it is an official 501c nonprofit, if it's C3 nonprofit, if it's classified that way, then they don't have to pay capital gains taxes. So like I was talking about, Uncle Sam gives himself a lot of wiggle room to define what property is so he can tax it all over the place. And I actually think it's nice at that point, like towards the end of this year, once you figure out what your tax liability is going to be and how much money you might want to be donating to charity, or just out of the goodness of your heart at any time of year, consider donating directly in the form of Bitcoin or potentially another cryptocurrency. Because like I said, once you send over the Bitcoin, if it's an official nonprofit, they don't, once they cash it out and actually use that money for charitable purposes, they don't have to pay the capital gains taxes on it like you would as an individual. And I think that's a wonderful thing. So save the boobs or figure out what your favorite charity is and consider donating your cryptocurrency any time of the year. And on that note, thank you for watching. I'm glad you made it over. And if you have any comments, suggestions, I always prefer that it's constructive in nature. I don't like responding to people who are kind of trolling and coming from a negative place. I think that's immature and ridiculous. But if you are genuinely curious about something or want to explain something, then please do so in the comments. I would love to see them, whether it's on this video, on the website. Just bring it on. All right, I will see you later. Bye.